I observed my son's face lose all color when the sheriff presented him with the eviction notice. Behind me stood the actual property owner, myself, along with the couple from whom he had been unlawfully collecting rent for 3 months. This same couple had kindly contacted me while I was in the hospital to inform me of the true situation regarding my house. My name is Diane Mitchell. I am 72 years old, and I wish to share with you the day I realized that nearly dying was not the worst experience of my year. Before we delve into this, I would appreciate knowing where you are watching from. Please share your location in the comments. I share this story to emphasize that sometimes the individuals who cause us the most pain are those we have nurtured ourselves. Let me take you back to March of this year. I had been living in my 3-bedroom colonial home in Portland, Oregon, for 42 years. My late husband David and I purchased it in 1982 when our son Trevor was just 2 years old. We raised him in that house, filling each bedroom with memories. After David passed away 8 years ago, I lived alone, content with my garden, my book club, and weekly dinners with Trevor and his wife, Shayna. I believed I was fortunate. My son visited every Sunday, mowed my lawn without prompting, and repaired my leaky faucet last fall. When Trevor and Shayna married 5 years ago, I gifted them $25,000 to assist with their down payment, believing we shared a close bond. However, March 19th changed everything. I was in my kitchen making coffee when the right side of my body suddenly failed. The mug slipped from my hand and shattered on the tile floor, but I couldn't look down at it because my neck wouldn't turn. My attempts to call out resulted in slurred words. Fortunately, I managed to activate the medical alert button that Trevor had insisted I wear 6 months prior. Now I understand his insistence. He was preparing for the future. The paramedics arrived within 8 minutes, but by the time they loaded me into the ambulance, I had lost feeling in the entire right side of my body. The ER doctor later informed me that I had experienced a significant ischemic stroke. They administered clot-busting medication just in time. The doctor noted that another 20 minutes could have resulted in my death or permanent severe damage. I spent 4 days in the ICU, during which time Trevor and Shayna visited only twice. On the second day, Trevor held my hand and assured me not to worry about anything, saying he would handle it all. He took my house keys from my purse, claiming he needed them to check on things, water my plants, and collect my mail. Overwhelmed with gratitude, I squeezed his hand with my left one, the only hand still functioning properly, and tears streamed down my face as I thought my son loved me. How naive I was. I was transferred to a rehabilitation facility on March 23rd called Riverside Recovery Center, where I would spend the next 3 months relearning to walk, use my right hand, and speak clearly. The first week was the most challenging. I could not shower, cut my own food, or dress myself. I required assistance for everything I had managed independently for 7 decades. The loss of dignity was crushing. Lying in that hospital bed at night, I would stare at the ceiling, listening to other patients crying or calling for nurses, feeling betrayed by my body, and questioning whether I would ever return home. The other patients became my community. Martha, in the room next to mine, was recovering from a car accident, while James down the hall was relearning to speak after a second stroke. We encouraged one another during therapy sessions and celebrated small victories, such as taking 3 steps without assistance or buttoning a shirt with one hand. These strangers became my support system, as my own son could not be bothered to show up. Trevor visited me on March 25th, just once in the first 2 weeks. He stood at the foot of my bed, hands in his pockets, and informed me that rehabilitation would take a long time. He mentioned the doctors had told him I might be there for 6 months or longer. However, that was not what my doctors had conveyed. In my medication-induced fog, I merely nodded. He reassured me not to worry about the house, promising to take care of everything. Then he said something that did not fully register at the time. "Mom, you know that big house is just sitting there empty. It seems like such a waste of space and utilities." I mumbled something about it being fine and that I would be home soon. He gave me a tight smile that did not reach his eyes and left after 15 minutes. Shayna never visited at all during those first 3 weeks. When I inquired about her during Trevor's brief phone call, he claimed she was busy with work, too busy to visit her recovering mother in law. April arrived, and my rehabilitation progressed better than expected. I was walking with a walker, my speech improved daily, and my right hand grew stronger. My physical therapist, Marcus, praised me as one of his star patients, suggesting that if I continued to work hard, I could potentially go home by early June, perhaps even late May. I was so focused on my recovery that I did not concern myself with the house, assuming it was merely waiting for my return. My mortgage had been paid off for 15 years, and I had set up automatic bill payments for utilities. Trevor had access to my accounts to manage any issues that arose. I had granted him power of attorney years ago when David passed away, trusting him with everything I possessed. On April 7th, I received a phone call that changed everything. I was in my room practicing hand exercises after lunch when my cell phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number with a local area code. Although I almost did not answer, something compelled me to do so. "Mrs. Mitchell," a young woman's voice said uncertainly. "Yes, this is Diane." "Mrs. Mitchell, my name is Amanda Torres. I am calling because I believe there is something you should know. My husband and I are renting your house on Maple Street." I froze. "I'm sorry, what? You're renting my house?" "We moved in on April 1st. Your son Trevor showed us the property and handled everything. We signed a lease with him and his wife Shayna. But Mrs. Mitchell, something feels very wrong about this situation." My heart raced. "What do you mean you're renting my house? I'm recovering from a stroke. I'm coming home soon." After a long pause, Amanda quietly stated, "Mrs. Mitchell, Trevor told us the house belonged to him and his wife. He said they inherited it recently. He never mentioned you at all." The room began to spin. I gripped the edge of my bed with my good hand. "Are you there right now? In my house?" "Yes, Mrs. Mitchell. I'm so sorry. When we moved in, I found some things. Photos and documents in a drawer in the bedroom. Photos of you and an older man dated just a few years ago. Documents with your name on them. Tax papers from last year. I started putting everything together and realized something was very wrong. I found your phone number on one of those documents. Trevor doesn't know I'm calling you." I want to pause here for a moment. If you find this story unbelievable, if you think there is no way someone could do this to their own mother, please subscribe, as what happens next will demonstrate just how far greed and betrayal can extend, even within families. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this concludes. "Amanda," I said, my voice trembling, "can you tell me precisely what is happening? Every detail." Over the next 30 minutes, Amanda Torres provided me with all the information. She and her husband, Carlos, had been searching for a rental house in a nice neighborhood. They found the listing for my house on Craigslist, advertised for $2,000 a month. Trevor had shown them the property, claimed it belonged to him and Shayna, and mentioned they had inherited it, deciding to rent it out for extra income. He appeared professional and friendly, showing them around as though he owned the place. They signed a lease, paid first and last month's rent along with a security deposit, $5,000 in total, cash, handed directly to Trevor. Amanda explained that Trevor and Shayna had cleared out many of my personal belongings, but left some furniture, telling the Torres couple that it came with the house. In reality, they had boxed up my most personal items, my photos, David's belongings, my jewelry, and documents, and stored them elsewhere. They staged my home as a rental property, even removing my prescription bottles from the bathroom cabinet and my reading glasses from the nightstand, eliminating every trace of my presence just weeks before. However, they made mistakes. Amanda discovered my reading journal, tucked behind books on a shelf, with entries dated just 2 weeks before my stroke. She found mail addressed to me stuffed in a kitchen drawer and the property tax statement from last year bearing my name. Most damning, she found our wedding album in a box in the closet, filled with photos of me and David from 1980, with my name written in my own handwriting on the first page. "Mrs. Mitchell," Amanda said, her voice thick with emotion, "Carlos and I are good people. We work hard. We don't want to be part of something illegal. When I realized what was happening, I knew I had to inform you. We have 3 children. We cannot afford to become entangled in fraud. But more importantly, what he is doing to you is evil. By this point, I was crying, ugly crying, the kind where one cannot catch their breath. A nurse entered, finding me sobbing into the phone, attempting to take it away, but I held on tightly. Amanda, I managed to say, thank you for calling me. Thank you for being honest. Can you do me a favor? Please document everything. Take photos of the lease, any messages with Trevor, anything you have. I already did, she replied. I took pictures of everything yesterday. I have it all saved. That was when I realized Amanda Torres was an angel sent to protect me from being robbed by my own child. After hanging up, I sat in that hospital room feeling an emotion I had never experienced before. It was not merely anger or hurt. It was a cold, clear understanding that the person I had raised, the baby I had nurtured, the child I had comforted, the young man I had sent to college, had seen me lying in a hospital bed as an opportunity. He had decided I was finished, used up. He had written me off as though I were already dead, moving on to claim his inheritance prematurely. For about an hour, I allowed myself to fall apart, crying until my head pounded and my ribs ached. Then I called my physical therapist, informing him that I needed to work harder. I needed to regain the strength to go home and manage this situation myself. Marcus looked at me strangely but replied, "Okay." The next day I contacted my attorney, Robert Chen. No, wait, Robert Sullivan. I had known Robert for 20 years. He had handled David's estate and my will. I shared every detail Amanda had provided. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. "Diane," he said, "this is serious fraud. This is elder abuse. This is potentially criminal." "I know," I replied. "What should I do?" Robert advised that the first step was to revoke Trevor's power of attorney immediately, which he could file on my behalf. The second step was to document everything, and the third was to contact the police. However, he suggested we gather all evidence first to present a complete case. Over the next 3 weeks, I collaborated with Robert while pushing myself in physical therapy, as if my life depended on it. Amanda Torres became my inside source, texting me photos of everything: the lease Trevor had drafted on a generic template he printed from the internet, the Craigslist listing, and his text messages regarding rent payments. She informed me that Trevor had come by once to collect May's rent, another $2,000 in cash, instructing them to always pay in cash to avoid a paper trail. He even provided them with a fake receipt book, easily obtainable at any office supply store, to lend it an official appearance. My son was both foolish and greedy, a disastrous combination. I also learned from Amanda that Trevor and Shayna had told their friends they were house-sitting for me while I recovered. They had hosted parties in my home, and neighbors reported seeing cars parked along the street on weekends. Mrs. Patterson, next door, had asked Trevor if everything was okay and if I would be coming home soon. Trevor had told her the prognosis was grim, suggesting I might need permanent care. He had stood on my front porch and informed my neighbor of 20 years that I would never return home. While I fought daily to regain my strength and prove the doctors wrong about my recovery timeline, my son was planning my funeral and spending my money. I also discovered through Amanda that Shayna had been using my kitchen, cooking meals with my pots and pans, and hosting friends for wine nights in my living room. They treated my home as though it were their personal vacation house. The disrespect was not merely financial, it was a complete erasure of my existence. By early May, I was walking without a walker. My right hand was regaining its grip, and my speech was clear. My doctor noted my remarkable recovery and indicated that I could likely return home by mid-May if I continued to progress. He seemed surprised by my rapid improvement, unaware that I was fueled by pure rage and determination. Robert Sullivan meticulously built the case. We gathered Amanda's evidence, analyzed my bank records, and noticed large cash withdrawals made by Trevor over the past 2 months. We contacted my homeowner's insurance company and discovered that Trevor had called them, posing as someone handling my affairs and inquiring about policy details. We documented everything. Subsequently, Robert contacted the Portland Police Department to explain the situation. Due to the involvement of fraud, elder abuse, and illegal rental activity, they took it seriously. A detective named Sarah Morrison was assigned to the case. She interviewed me by phone, reviewed all our evidence, and informed me she would coordinate with us for when I was ready to return home. Mrs. Mitchell, Detective Morrison stated, "What your son did is not only morally reprehensible, it is criminal. We will ensure this is handled appropriately." I scheduled my discharge for May 18th. Robert arranged everything with surgical precision, coordinating with Detective Morrison. We ensured Amanda and Carlos were informed about when to expect us. I did not disclose my return to Trevor. As far as he knew, I was still struggling in rehab and not a threat. May 18th arrived on a Tuesday morning. I was dressed in real clothes for the first time in 2 months: jeans, a sweater, and comfortable shoes. I had lost 15 pounds, and my hair had grayed, but I felt stronger than I had in years. Robert picked me up from Riverside Recovery at 9 a.m., and we drove to the police station, where Detective Morrison was waiting with 2 uniformed officers and the paperwork for Trevor's arrest. At 10:30, we arrived at my house, the home I had inhabited for 42 years, where I had raised my son, filled with memories of my marriage. A strange car was in the driveway, Amanda and Carlos's sedan. The lawn had been mowed recently, and my flower beds looked weedy and neglected, but the house appeared unchanged. It looked like home. Robert assisted me out of his car as the police cruiser pulled up behind us. Amanda opened my front door and stepped onto the porch, her eyes red as if she had been crying. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said, her voice trembling, "he's here. Trevor came by an hour ago to collect June's rent early. He's inside right now." Detective Morrison nodded to the uniformed officers, one of whom handed me my house keys, copies made by Amanda and given to Robert last week as evidence. I held those keys in my hand, feeling their weight. "Are you ready?" Robert asked quietly. I looked at him, this kind man who had been a friend to both David and me for 2 decades. I have never been more ready for anything in my life. I unlocked my front door and entered my own house. The living room looked different. They had rearranged the furniture. My wedding photo that once hung above the fireplace was gone, replaced by a generic beach scene print from HomeGoods. I could smell someone else's cooking, someone else living their life in my space. I heard voices from the kitchen, Trevor's laughter and Shayna discussing plans for dinner later. I walked through my living room, past the dining room, and stood in the doorway of my kitchen. Trevor sat at my kitchen table, the table that David and I had purchased 30 years ago, where we had shared thousands of family dinners, counting cash, $100 bills spread out before him. Shayna stood at the counter, drinking coffee from my favorite mug, the one that said "World's Best Mom," which Trevor had given me for Mother's Day when he was 12. They did not notice me at first. Trevor was saying, "That's 4,000 for May and June. These idiots are so easy. They believe everything I tell them." That was when I spoke. "Hello, Trevor." I had never seen anyone transition from relaxed to terrified so swiftly. His head snapped up, and I watched his face shift from normal color to white, then gray, as though I were witnessing the life drain from him in real time. The cash slipped from his hands, scattering across the table. Shayna dropped the mug, which shattered on the floor, coffee spraying everywhere. "Mom," Trevor's voice emerged, strained. "What are you doing? How are you home?" I completed his thought. "I am home, Trevor. In my house. The house you have been illegally renting to people while claiming you inherited it. The house where you have been collecting cash payments, throwing parties, and living your best life while I fought to relearn how to walk." He stood up so quickly that his chair fell backward. "Mom, I can explain. Save it." I stepped aside, allowing Detective Morrison to enter the kitchen, followed by the 2 uniformed officers. "These individuals would like to speak with you regarding fraud, elder abuse, and theft." Trevor's eyes widened in disbelief, and Shayna made a sound akin to a wounded animal. "Mrs. Mitchell," Detective Morrison formally inquired, "can you confirm this man is Trevor Mitchell and that he has been unlawfully leasing your property without your knowledge or consent while you were recovering from a medical emergency?" "I can confirm that," I stated, maintaining a steady voice. "Trevor Mitchell," Detective Morrison continued, "you are under arrest for fraud, elder abuse, and theft by deception." The officer produced handcuffs. At that moment, Trevor began to plead. "Mom, please. You don't understand. We needed the money." Shayna lost her job. We have bills. I was going to tell you. I was going to give you the money. This is all a misunderstanding. Mom, please. I'm your son." I looked at this man, this stranger wearing my son's face, and felt nothing but cold disgust. My son died the day he decided to steal from his mother while she lay in a hospital bed. I added, "My son died when he told people I would never return, that I was too far gone to matter anymore. You are not my son. You are a thief who happens to share my DNA." They placed handcuffs on him. Shayna cried, claiming she was unaware and not part of it, but Amanda had text messages from Shayna as well, coordinating viewings and discussing rental income. They arrested her too. As the officers led them away, Trevor glanced back at me one last time. "Mom, I'm sorry. Please don't do this." I did not respond. I simply watched him being escorted out of my house in handcuffs. Amanda and Carlos stood in the living room with Robert. Amanda was crying. "Mrs. Mitchell, we will move out immediately. We are so sorry we got involved in this." "Amanda," I said, walking toward her, "you saved me. You could have simply enjoyed cheap rent and said nothing. Instead, you called me and told me the truth. You documented everything. You helped me reclaim my home." I turned to Robert. "Can they stay until they find another place? I will honor whatever time they need for a proper relocation." Robert nodded. "We can draft a proper month-to-month lease if you wish." Given that they were also victims of fraud, the court would likely order Trevor and Shayna to return their deposit and rent payments. Amanda sobbed and hugged me, while Carlos shook his head in disbelief. The police searched the house and discovered boxes of my belongings in the garage, my photos, David's items, my jewelry, all tucked away as if they were worthless. They documented everything for evidence. I spent the remainder of the day examining my house, room by room, to see what my son had done. Trevor and Shayna were formally charged 3 days later. The district attorney informed me they faced significant prison time, up to 5 years each for the felony elder abuse charges alone, along with additional time for fraud and theft. Trevor's public defender attempted to argue that he had merely sought to preserve my assets, that he intended to return the money eventually, and that financial stress had driven him to make poor decisions. Robert stood in court and presented our evidence. The Craigslist advertisements, the fraudulent lease, the text messages in which Trevor referred to the renters as idiots for believing him, and the bank records indicating cash withdrawals that matched the rental payments he collected from the Torres family just hours later. The judge gazed at Trevor with palpable contempt. She stated, "You exploited your mother's medical crisis for personal gain. You attempted to steal her home while she fought to recover from a stroke. You demonstrated a pattern of deception that not only impacted your victim, but also innocent third parties who trusted you. This court finds your actions particularly egregious given the trust relationship involved. You didn't just commit fraud, you committed it against the woman who gave you life." Trevor's bail was set at $50,000, which he could not afford. He remained in jail for 6 weeks until Shayna's parents mortgaged their house to bail them both out. By then, I had already changed my will. Robert drafted a new one that explicitly disinherited Trevor and Shayna, ensuring that every penny of my estate would go to charity. Trevor would receive nothing, not my house, not my savings, nor David's life insurance policy that I had preserved all these years. Not a single photograph or dish towel. I also filed a restraining order, prohibiting Trevor and Shayna from coming within 500 feet of me or my property. In August, they accepted a plea deal. 3 years in prison for Trevor, 2 years for Shayna, plus 5 years of probation following their release and full restitution to both me and the Torres family. They were also responsible for covering my legal fees, nearly $30,000. I attended court when they were sentenced. Trevor glanced at me one final time before being taken away. I met his gaze and did not look away. I wanted him to see that I was fine without him, better than fine. I had survived the stroke and his betrayal. I was still here, still standing in my house, still living my life. He was the one going to prison, while I was the one returning home. Amanda and Carlos moved out in September after finding an affordable house. The court mandated Trevor to return all their payments, which allowed them to make a genuine down payment on their new home. They visit me occasionally. Last Sunday, they brought their children over for dinner. Their youngest daughter told me I remind her of her grandmother, which made me smile. Some families are those we are born into, while others are those we choose. The Torres family chose to do the right thing when they could have simply turned a blind eye, and for that, I will always be grateful. I celebrated my 72nd birthday last month in my garden, surrounded by my book club friends, enjoying cake and laughter. My right hand still tires occasionally, and I walk with a slight limp when fatigued, but I am here. I am alive. I am home. Trevor will be released in 2027 if he serves his full sentence. He has written me 4 letters from prison, all of which I have burned without reading. Shayna's parents penned a letter pleading for mercy and asking for my forgiveness. I returned it marked, "Return to sender." Forgiveness is not something they can demand from me. It is something I may choose to grant when I am ready, if I ever am. At present, I am not inclined toward forgiveness. I am focused on living my life in my house with individuals who genuinely care about me. Some people suggest I have been too harsh, that family should forgive family, and that Trevor made a mistake. However, here's what I know. What Trevor did was not a mistake. Mistakes are accidents. What Trevor did was calculated, planned, and deliberate. He observed me nearly die, and his first thought was how to benefit from it. That is not family. That is a predator. My name is Diane Mitchell. I am 72 years old. I survived a major stroke, fought my way back from disability, and reclaimed my home from the son who attempted to steal it. I am still here, still standing, and I am not going anywhere. Please subscribe to my channel. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. With love and respect.